Hey there, good afternoon. Welcome back to our last installment for this Holy Week of Footsteps of Jesus. Now, today being Saturday, there are no footsteps of Jesus for us to follow, but there are still some events that the Gospel tells us about. Now, Saturday, of course, is the day that Jesus spends in the tomb. Buried on Friday, raised on Sunday. Saturday is, well, it's the day of rest. As you know, Saturday in the Jewish tradition is the Sabbath, the day for resting, and Jesus certainly rests in the tomb, rests from all his labors, the very, very hard work that he's been doing this whole week, especially the Passion, the crucifixion, and the extremely traumatic trial that was. And so from all this hard work, Jesus takes a day of rest, the ultimate rest. We say sometimes, so-and-so slept like the dead. Well, in Jesus' case, that is literally true. It's also a reminder that when we talk about works and salvation, we say salvation comes by faith and not works. And when we say that, we mean not our own work, not any human work. But there is a lot of work that goes into salvation. It's just that God does the work for us. Jesus does the work for us. There is a lot of hard work involved in saving a person's soul, but that hard work comes as his gift to us, not as his requirement from us. Now, the other thing in the course of this Holy Saturday, for one thing, it says at the end of Luke's Passion account, it says that the women who had followed Jesus and were there at the crucifixion, they were making their plans to come back Sunday morning and tend to Jesus' body, to clean it and care for it and give it a proper burial. And it says that they prepared their spices and so forth, and then on the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. So we know that they are certainly resting on this Sabbath, just as they were meant to do, just as Jesus is doing, though in a very different way. But not everybody is resting on the Sabbath day. The one thing that the Gospels tell us about what's happening on that day is the chief priests and the Pharisees come back to Pilate. You'd think that Pilate would probably be sick of them by now, after all that he went through the previous day on Friday. But they come back to Pilate and they say, we just remembered that when he was alive, this guy said he would rise again after 3 days. And so they ask Pilate, help, set a guard so that so that we can make sure, as they're afraid, the priests and Pharisees are afraid that his disciples will come and steal the body to make this deception on people, say that he was raised. So they go today on this Saturday, they go to Pilate, they ask for guard, and he says, go ahead, take the guard, post the guard at the temple. They seal the stone, they post the soldiers there. And what fascinates me about this is, even when the disciples apparently don't remember all Jesus had said about his resurrection, and he did talk to them about it. It says several times in the Gospels, he told them very plainly, I am going to be killed, and then after 3 days, I'm going to rise from the dead. He told this to them, and apparently it was public enough that even the priests and the Pharisees knew about it. The disciples seem to have forgotten, but his enemies remember this prophecy. They seem to be more concerned about it than his followers are. And so they do what they can to make sure that this doesn't happen through some sort of deception. And this is, of course, one of the charges about the empty tomb, that, his disciples just stole the body away and pretended that he had risen from the dead. Of course, there are a lot of problems with that theory. Perhaps we'll go through some of those things next week, some of the objections or possible problems that people have raised with the resurrection, and why we can trust the historical fact of the resurrection. But so on this Saturday, we leave Jesus resting in the tomb, the women preparing, the disciples hiding, and his enemies still coming after him, still doing what they can to eliminate his threat. Now this is the 7th day, the day of rest, the Sabbath day. Tomorrow, the first day of the week, is also called the 8th day. Now that's a reference to the creation account, of course. 7 days of creation, 6 days of creating the world, and 1 day of rest. calling the day of resurrection the eighth day is a reminder that Jesus is the beginning of the new creation, that in him something completely new is happening, something completely new is coming into the world, that everything is restored. And so it is the first day of the week, but it is also the first day of a new creation. So tonight, for our Easter Vigil service, we go through some of the history of salvation from the Old Testament all the way up to that moment. So I hope you'll check that out and join us tomorrow, whether online or in the drive-in service, if the weather is permitting, for our Easter resurrection service.